Bonjour, bon après-midi et bonne nuit à tout le monde qui a regardé la vidéo ça. Ça dépend de qui côté vous vivez dans le moment ça. Non, pas M. Théodore. Dans la vidéo ça, moi je vais regarder comment le président des États-Unis, Joe Biden, ensemble avec Madame Jill Biden, a visité et par respect à 19 familles moun qui étaient morts en babal dans un jeune garçon âgé de 18 ans dans la ville Uvalde, Texas. Parmi eux, il y a 19 timoun et 2 professeurs. Pas déplacés, m'a retourné dans un autre petit moment. Merci.
Runway there. Once again, we do have live coverage this morning. The president's visit here to San Antonio, and most of the day he will be spending in Uvalde, visiting with family members of the victims of the shooting on Tuesday. He'll also be visiting with first responders as well this morning. You're taking once again a live look at Kelly Field at Joint Base San Antonio. That's out near Lackland as President Biden is arriving here in San Antonio, visiting with the families today. Once again, he does have a full agenda. President and First Lady will be at the memorial site at Robb Elementary School. We've seen so many images of that. People from all over the state, even the country, visiting Robb Elementary this week, bringing flowers, bringing photos of loved ones to pay their respects after the tragedy that happened there on Tuesday afternoon. We know that Vice President Kamala Harris was in Buffalo, New York this weekend, visiting with family members of that tragedy that happened there recently as well. Once again, you can see the president, the Air Force One is arriving there at Kelly Field in San Antonio. We have received word that we may have some local dignitaries there to meet the president. We're still waiting to confirm that as well, but you can see Air Force One slowly arriving at Kelly Field. We do have a reporter there. We will check in with Jaleesa Irizarry shortly, as soon as the president exits the plane. And once again, you can see this is at Kelly Field near Lackland. JBSA, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are arriving here in San Antonio, where they will make their way to Uvalde. They have a full agenda of it. They will be visiting with the victims and the survivors of the tragedy on Tuesday. We are going to check in with Jaleesa Irizarry, who is there right now waiting for the president to get off his Air Force One. Jaleesa, tell us what you have seen today, what you're hearing out there at Kelly.
Good morning, Vanessa. It has been a full morning here at Kelly Field. Crews have been preparing for the president's visit all morning. We were here bright and early as well. Very eager to see the president this morning as he makes his first trip to Uvalde, Texas. Like you mentioned, once the president arrives here, he will deplane Air Force One, and then he will walk over to Marine One and take the helicopter to Garner Field in Uvalde. The president does have a full day. Obviously, it's going to be an incredibly emotional day, not only for the president, but as well as for all of the people in Uvalde hurting right now, looking for answers, looking for peace. As you can see right now, Air Force One is getting closer to its stop. All crews here are at attention, waiting for the president. Like I said, this means a lot to a lot of people. Sorry, Vanessa.
You were saying that you saw many other aircrafts arrive earlier. It looks like a lot of Secret Service out there on the tarmac as well. What else are you seeing out there?
Yes, a lot of Secret Service are here. There is a lot of security surrounding the perimeter, just making sure that the president is safe. Obviously, two helicopters, one being his Marine One that he will take to Garner Field. Secret Service is starting to walk towards Air Force One right now. The stairwell is about to come into picture. And yeah, it's just been a full day of security. Vanessa, I can tell you right now, Mayor Ron Nirenberg is here. I have eyes on him. So he is not at the tarmac, but he is awaiting by some of the security vehicles ready to greet President Biden. So we do have a local leader here, making sure President Biden feels welcome from this big trip.
And as we know, Jaleesa, too,
like I said, this means a lot.
We are,
sorry, Vanessa.
San Antonio's almost 2 hours from Uvalde, but the feeling to support the Uvalde strong community right now is felt all over the state, especially for us here in San Antonio, who are so close to those communities out there. And, we've all been out there all week visiting with those families as well and seeing the hurt and the grieving across that community. Jaleesa, we're going to go back to you and tell us what you're seeing out there.
Yes, so the stairwells to the plane, all of the individuals on Air Force One are being set up right now. Secret Service is setting up as well, making sure that everyone is safe. We are seeing some military officials walking out on the back of the plane, as well as some Secret Service officials that are seaplaning the back of the plane. Obviously, this is an entire process for a big reason. Safety is of the utmost key in situations like this. It looks like there is some press seaplaning as well right now. And they are bringing over the second stairwell, the stairwell in which I believe the president will be walking down. Mayor Ron Nirenberg is walking along with that stairwell. Looks like he will be greeting the president as soon as he gets off of the plane, as well as Air Force officials.
And Jaleesa, do you see any other of our local dignitaries out there today?
I truly only see Mayor Ron Nirenberg, to my knowledge.
We can see the mayor right there at the end of the stairwell, ready to greet the president and first lady when they exit Airport One.
Yes, press is gearing up to the right of the stairwell. Marines are at attention, ready to greet President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden.
Now joining us, we are continuing our live coverage. We are at Kelly Field this morning as President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are arriving here in San Antonio at Kelly Field. They will be heading to Uvalde, where they will be visiting with victims and families, the victims' families of the tragedy that happened there on Tuesday. They will then attend a mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church before they will also meet with first responders after that, as well as meeting with the families, victims of the families and the survivors today. We're going to go back to Jaleesa, who is live there at Kelly. Jaleesa, what are you seeing now?
President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden have just gotten off of Air Force One. They are walking down the stairwell where they will be greeted by Mayor Ron Nirenberg, taking their time. Marines are at attention. Joe Biden is holding President Biden's arm. Mayor Ron Nirenberg shaking the hand of President Joe Biden, sharing some words. Shaking the hand of First Lady Jill Biden. Like we mentioned earlier, after President Biden leaves Air Force One, he plans to get onto Marine One, where he will head to Garner Field in Uvalde. President Joe Biden is speaking with Air Force officials right now, and they are starting their walk to Marine One.
Jaleesa, it looks like the president is walking straight to to depart to Uvalde. We were wondering if he was going to share any words before he heads out there, but it looks like he is going to get right on the chopper and head out to Uvalde. He'll be landing in Garner Field in Uvalde. The White House is telling us around 11 a.m. Looks like his schedule is close to the times that he is trying to stick to today. At 11:30, he is set to visit the memorial site at Robb Elementary School, where we've seen this week so many people stopping by to pay their respects to loved ones. Let's check in with Jaleesa. I know the president is about ready to leave. Jaleesa, what are you seeing out there?
President Biden has boarded Marine One with First Lady Jill Biden. They will be heading to Uvalde right now. Mayor Ron Nirenberg quickly left the tarmac and got into a car. My guess is he may be headed to Uvalde or he may be done for the day, but he did not join them on the helicopter. It's just President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden. Obviously, they will be headed to Garner Field in Uvalde, where they have a big day ahead. Lots of events scheduled, lots of important meetings scheduled to talk to the people of Uvalde, console the people of Uvalde, and let them know that they are not alone. Press is also boarding a secondary plane, where they obviously will be going with the president, as well as he makes his visits to a local Catholic church, as well as Robb Elementary School, and meeting with the victims' families, as well as the first responders in the shooting.
And once again, we are live this morning at Kelly Field, JBSA, near Lackland, as President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are arriving here in San Antonio. They just boarded Marine One. They are headed to Garner Field in Uvalde. They are visiting with that community today and just showing their support of that community. They're also set to visit with families of the victims and survivors of the tragedy on Tuesday. We also know that President and First Lady will attend a mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church around noon today. And after that, they will also be meeting with first responders out in that community. And it looks like, Jaleesa, are they, we know Jaleesa just shared with us as well that Mayor Ron Nirenberg met President Biden when he got off Air Force One before he boarded Marine One. Let's check in with Jaleesa. It looks like the president is about ready to leave.
Yes, absolutely. The helicopter just started up. The secondary planes that arrived ahead of Air Force One have started up with press on that plane. It's, of course, very loud, but yeah, it looks like they are gearing up to leave, and we'll be leaving here momentarily, where they will head to Garner Field in Uvalde and spend a full day with the people of Uvalde. Obviously, Secret Service is still here. Marines at Air Force One still standing at attention. But it's expected to be a full day here for President Biden, because he does not expect to leave out of San Antonio until much later this evening. I'm sure the people of Uvalde are very eager to see him, and we'll be seeing him shortly.
And Jaleesa just shared with us as well that Mayor Ron Nirenberg was there to meet President Biden as he got off Air Force One before he walked over to Marine One to depart to Uvalde. We are unsure if the mayor will be meeting the president in Uvalde. Jaleesa, go ahead and tell us that again. And you are watching Marine One, President.
The drive time to Uvalde is about an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on where you live in San Antonio. It'll be much shorter than that on Marine One.
President Biden is set to land in Uvalde around 11 o'clock.
Takes off. Secondary helicopter will follow. And the three planes that came for Air Force One with press and other officials on hand will follow suit.
Once again, President President Biden has arrived in San Antonio about 10 or 15 minutes ago. He flew in on Air Force One in Kelly Field, JBSA near Lackland. Our reporter Jaleesa Irizarry has been there this morning and let us know that Mayor Ron Nirenberg was there meeting the president when he got off the plane. He quickly got on Marine One that you see right now that is about to take off to travel to Uvalde. He's landing at Garner Field. We have a reporter there. We'll check in with Troy in just a few minutes. But we know the president has a full day in Uvalde, coming here to pay his respects and visit with the families and the community that's just been hurting so much after the tragedy on Tuesday. We do know he's going to, once he lands in Uvalde, the president and first lady will be traveling to Robb Elementary School and visiting the memorial site in the front of the school that we have watched many people from across the state, even across the country, stop there to pay their respects to the 19 students and the 2 teachers that were killed at Robb Elementary School by that 18-year-old gunman on Tuesday. And many people, family members, loved ones, stopping to drop off flowers and pictures, balloons. And we'll see some shots of that shortly today. Let's check in with Jaleesa one more time while we're watching Marine One take off. Jaleesa, what do you see?
We are seeing Marine One as well as the secondary helicopter and the 3 airplanes carrying officials as well as press departing right now, all departing at the same time, headed to Garner Field in Uvalde.
And Jaleesa, from where you are standing, I know that
down.
You know, what was the feeling when Mayor Ron Nirenberg also met the president there? What can you tell us about that interaction? What did you see?
It was very brief. Mayor Ron Nirenberg shook the hand of President Joe Biden, shared a few words, then turned to the right, shook the hand of First Lady Jill Biden, and shared a few words. Air Force officials then stepped in and also shared a few words with Joe Biden. But there is such an extreme sense of respect on this field. As President Biden was here the entire time, you could see all officials, not just the Marines on hand, standing at attention, hands in front of them, showing respect for the president and taking this in. Obviously not a common thing to witness a presidential visit. And so I think a lot of people took it in, no matter who you are. Some of the employees here on this at Kelly Field just stood there in awe, watching as the president made his way from Air Force One to Marine One. Just a feel of respect.
Military
and a lot of
City
people
USA
just eager to see him get to Uvalde. Absolutely, absolutely. Military City, USA, through and through. That's really shown on days like today, Vanessa.
And we do have a reporter at Garner Field in Uvalde. Troy Kless is there. That is where the president is set to land in Marine One in a little less than 40 minutes, around 11 o'clock. He will depart there, and he is headed to Robb Elementary School, where he will pay his respects to the lives lost in the shooting on Tuesday. He will visit the memorial site that, once again, we've seen so many people stop there this week, that has grown from Tuesday when that shooting happened. People started dropping off flowers that evening in the community, really hurting there and grieving the loss of the 19 students and 2 teachers. We do know that multiple people are still in the hospital. We can't confirm if they are students or teachers at this time, but we do know that one child has been released from the hospital this week. And are we ready to check in with Troy Kless at Garner Field? Okay, we'll check in with Troy in just a few minutes. Once again, you are seeing Marine One just departed from Kelly Field, JBSA near Lackland. President Biden arriving in San Antonio about
justamente una oración donde han llegado justamente globos, flores. Vemos en este momento al presidente, la seguridad. rodeando esta zona, una comunidad totalmente entristecida, agonizando por lo que pasó. Posteriormente, Nicole, el presidente, según ha revelado la Casa Blanca en su agenda, va a participar en una celebración eucarística, en una misa, donde posteriormente, y esto es importante mencionarlo, Nicole, se va a reunir con los familiares y también con los sobrevivientes de este tiroteo, y donde se esperan quizás no solamente aliento, consuelo, duelo por lo que acaba de pasar, sino cambios en lo que viene en un futuro. Los papás, hemos platicado muchos de ellos, nos dicen que basta de discursos, basta ya de palabras, acciones. Incluso muchos de ellos nos mencionaron en entrevistas que cómo es posible que un joven de 18 años que no puede comprar una cerveza, no puede comprar cigarrillos, pero sí puede comprar un rifle de asalto, una AR-15, entre otros cargamentos. Realmente, Nicole, tú lo has escuchado, los papás. Vemos ahí
el presidente Joe Biden.
Ya está el presidente Biden.
Sí, ya lo
te dejo
vemos
los micrófonos ahí, Nicole.
Acompañado de la primera dama Jill Biden con flores en mano. Han llegado, como bien mencionas, a la escuela elemental Robb, donde ahí podemos ver que se han reunido cientos de flores, de velas, de fotografías. Vestidos de negro han llegado para rendirle tributo a estas 21 víctimas. Estamos escuchando aplausos de la comunidad de Uvalde en Texas. Vamos a escuchar. ¿Qué están gritando?
To go through more or less a child. So I just wanted to do something, and making shirts, which is what I do, is how I found the way to do it.
And I think for me, I'm curious, and I actually haven't talked to parents. I know, Phil, who's our anchor, he's a father. But I mean, just one last question here: what kind of conversation do you have with your 10-year-old?
They've changed in the last days a lot. Before it used to be, the typical stranger danger kind of, but now it's like if something were to happen like this, God forbid, if it does, this is what you do, A, B, and C.
Right. Sorry, I'm being told. Phil and Elisa, I'm sorry, we'll have to send it back to you guys.
Okay, Henry, thank you. And we thank Joanna Garcia from San Antonio for sharing that with us. If you're joining us just now, you're taking a live look at Garner Field in Uvalde, Texas. The president and the first lady are getting ready to leave Uvalde after a jam-packed day. They arrived there around 11 o'clock this morning. They went straight to the school, Robb Elementary, and paid their respects at the school. You can only imagine the emotion that was going through them when they saw that growing memorial there at the school. And then around noon today, the president and first lady attended Mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church. And around 1:30, they met with families of the victims as well as survivors for about three and a half hours. And then they just wrapped up meeting with first responders. So this is Dr. Jill Biden and President Joe Biden now getting on to Marine One. They will leave here in just a matter of minutes, and then they will fly from Uvalde back here to San Antonio, arrive at Kelly Field, and we will go back out live to Kelly Field in just a bit. We've got reporter Sarah Duran standing by, and then they will leave Kelly Field in San Antonio around 6:45 before departing back to Delaware.
And in meeting with these first responders, they talked with them for about an hour. You had multiple agencies responding to this scene. You had Uvalde CISD Police, Border Patrol, Texas Rangers, afterwards DPS, and you can imagine the scene that they arrived to, and as soon as they opened the door to the classroom and confronted the gunman, the feelings there, as many of those officers had children at Robb Elementary School. So you had that response, obviously, at the school. And then as that was happening throughout the day, you had emergency crews from across South Texas go to Uvalde and stand by for help. For example, right down the street on Main Street in Uvalde from the Civic Center, where parents were instructed to pick up their children on the day of the shooting, you had a staging area for law enforcement vehicles. You had ambulances, for example, for first responders from Bandera County, from Valverde, from areas around Uvalde that were just ready for the call in case first responders on the scene needed their help in any sort of way. And so you have these conversations that are much needed, and this is another entity that will, I'm sure, be grieving for a very, very long time.
Yeah, mixed emotions, a lot of grief also, though, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration as well, understandably so. And of course, we do now know, as of today, that the DOJ will be conducting a review of how the situation was handled by law enforcement there on the scene. That will be made public, and then of course we'll see what happens from there. A lot of people asking for accountability, but first we'll see what the DOJ says, how everything was handled. But again, you're taking a live look at Garner Field in Uvalde, Marine One, with President Joe Biden and the First Lady, Dr. Joe Biden, getting ready to take off from Uvalde and head back here to San Antonio. They'll arrive at Kelly Field around 6:45 before leaving San Antonio and headed back to Delaware.
So yesterday, President Biden was at his alma mater. He was at the University of Delaware, and he delivered a commencement address. And in his speech, you know, he was addressing these mass shootings, like you mentioned earlier, the shooting at the Buffalo supermarket, and then the shooting in Uvalde. And he told graduates yesterday, he said, in the face of such destructive forces, we have to stand stronger. He said, we cannot outlaw tragedy, but we can make America safer. And in his closing remarks, he said, no generation gets to choose what world they graduate into, but a few generations enter at a point in history where they have the power to change the trajectory of a nation. And you can. And so you mentioned also earlier how he related to these parents as he was visiting with them for hours, how he has also lost a child, you know. So I think
two children.
Pardon me, yes, 2 children. And so I'm curious to see how these families responded, because our reporters who are on scene, they say that he's getting mixed reactions. So curious to see how these families feel after a visit from the President of the United States. I mean, I know this community is exhausted. We heard from people who were not directly affected, as in they didn't have a family member who perished in this, but how they are hurting and how they couldn't get out of bed for days and they couldn't eat for days. We interviewed a teacher who was a father of a teacher, 4th grade teacher, who was 3 doors down from the classroom where all of these students and their 2 teachers were killed. And he said, my family, we just can't sleep. It's almost like we feel a sense of guilt. We can't wake up without thinking, was this all a nightmare? did this all really happen? And you have some teachers who are considering a career change if protection isn't provided in a different way for these classrooms, for these schools. So these conversations are just starting to emerge about what do we do from here. And Henry asked Senator Roland Gutierrez, what can we do from here? And he said, we hopefully can make change starting in Austin.
Yeah, and you can understand at the same time the frustration and the skepticism that a lot of Americans have, because keep in mind, it was 10 years ago, 2012, when Sandy Hook Elementary had that massacre at their school that killed 20 kids, 6 teachers. And that was when Joe Biden was vice president. Fast forward 10 years, and here we are, and he's playing the role of consoler in chief, and now he's having to deal with another mass shooting inside an elementary school. The last place you would think something like that would happen.
And he isn't the first, should I say, not celebrity, but big name to visit Uvalde. You have people from all over Texas, all over the nation going to pay their respects. We saw Meghan Markle this week. Matthew McConaughey is from Uvalde. He was there shortly after the shooting, just a couple of days after. So this is something that has really, really touched our nation, to see the faces of these children and their plans for the future, and their families who just, it's so devastating. Some had to identify their child through a DNA sample. This is still raw for many of these families. Just days have passed since this has happened. So we look forward to see what can be done from here. We have optimism, we have skepticism. So we'll see what difference maybe this visit can make. I know a lot of people, like we mentioned earlier, they're trying to see what can happen with Robb Elementary School.
Yeah, and you're taking a live look at Marine One leaving Garner Field in Uvalde, Texas, carrying the president as well as First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. They are now headed back here to San Antonio and will arrive at Kelly Field around 6:45. We will go back out to Kelly Field live. That's where our reporter Sarah Duran is standing by. She's waiting for the president to arrive, and then he'll jump on to Air Force One before heading out to Delaware.
Set to arrive in Delaware around 11 o'clock tonight.
What?
And this has just been a full day, and Sarah Duran, I believe, joins us now live from Kelly Field. Sarah.
Hey there, Alicia and Phil. Again, still dealing with those heavy winds, so it's really hard to hear you right now. But like you said, we are along the tarmac here at Kelly Field. You can see air.
And a whole new step in this healing process.
For these next few weeks, we're going to continue with these funeral services, and they have been taken care of for these families. You have donors who are trying to help ease that burden for these families during this just unfathomable time as they lay their loved ones to rest. Right now, these families should be preparing for summer vacation, preparing for summer camps, preparing for maybe, you know, a pool day. It's Memorial Day weekend, you know, but instead they are planning for their funerals. And you have one family in particular who lost 2 members. The family of Irma Garcia. They, that just days after Mrs. Garcia's death, she was a teacher in the 4th grade classroom. Her husband died of a heart attack. And that is a very real thing, doctors say, to die of heartbreak. I was reading, of course, social media has just been flooding with tributes and memories and speaking more about the character of these kids and how just delightful each one of them were, and these teachers. I read that Irma Garcia's husband was a manager of an HEB in Del Rio. So he has touched very, very many lives, as have all of the victims from this tragedy. We have some of the children who aspired to be, start a career taking care of animals, maybe a veterinarian. You have other children who wanted to be artists. You had a graduation ceremony the day before this shooting happened, or a graduation tradition, I should say. The seniors of the local high school walked through the hallways of Robb Elementary School giving high fives to those children. And I'm sure some of those children said, you know what, one day that's going to be me.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you're taking a live look at Air Force One, getting ready to leave San Antonio. This is at Kelly Field. The President and First Lady on board Air Force One as we get ready to conclude his visit here in South Texas. It's been a long day, a much needed day depending on who you talk to. The President did arrive this morning around 10 o'clock. He was greeted by Mayor Ron Nirenberg, quickly jumped onto Marine One, and then arrived in Uvalde around 11 and was greeted by Governor Greg Abbott, the First Lady of Texas, as well as the Mayor of Uvalde, Don McLaughlin. Congressman Tony Gonzalez was there. State Senator Roland Gutierrez was there. Dr. Jill Biden and President Biden then went to Robb Elementary School and paid their respects to those 21 lives cut way too short. And then from there, they went to Sacred Heart Catholic Church and Mass with about 600 people in attendance. And Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller led that Mass. And then from there, the President and First Lady met with families of the victims and survivors, and understandably so, that was where the bulk of the time was spent, about three and a half hours. And then the President and First Lady met with first responders just about 2 hours ago. And then they left Uvalde around 6, and here we are now at 6:48. The President and First Lady on Air Force One getting ready to leave South Texas as the sun continues to set here on this Sunday. As you mentioned, it is Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow we should be focused on the live sacrifice by some of our nation's heroes. And here we are also remembering the young lives cut too short.
I do want to mention a quote that the pool reporter who was at the Mass said really quickly as Air Force One is taking off from San Antonio's Kelly Field back to Delaware, again set to arrive at about 11 o'clock Eastern time tonight, carrying the President and First Lady. The Archbishop said in the Mass today, our response must be one of hope and healing. We must move forward together. And he urged the community to resolve to support one another with respect for our differences. So I thought that was a beautiful thing to say, because so many conversations are happening right now. You have people with opinions on both sides about what should be done from this, but I thought that message of peace and respect was much needed today, especially for these families who are caught in the middle of all of this.
Yeah, and it was less than 2 weeks ago, May 17th, that President Joe Biden made a visit to Buffalo, New York to grieve with family members there who lost 10 lives in Buffalo, New York because of a gunman that went into a grocery store and caused that tragedy. And here we are less than 2 weeks later, the President playing that role of consoler-in-chief again, this time here in South Texas, arriving in San Antonio and then going to Uvalde to console those 21 families who have lost their loved ones, who have unfortunately had to deal with the unspeakable tragedy that we all know of.
And you had the Vice President traveling this weekend as well, Kamala Harris. She said the country is experiencing an epidemic of hate. She made that comment yesterday. She was speaking at the funeral of Ruth Whitfield, one of the victims from the Buffalo mass shooting at that grocery store. Harris said hate was the through line, so the common denominator in the shootings in Texas, Buffalo, Atlanta, and Orlando. So she said that hate should not win. She said the time is now for people to stand up. She says that we will not be separated or be made to live in fear by those who are motivated by hate. So President and Vice President having to travel over this weekend for 2 different mass shootings in the month of May here in America, one of which has very deeply touched South Texas, from the town of Uvalde. A little more than 15,000 people who are still trying to get day by day, just trying to figure out how to begin to move on, or to cope, I should say, with what has happened in their community.
Yeah, and we can't forget there were still 5 people in hospitals here in San Antonio. We do know that 2 adult patients are in fair condition right now at BAMC. There's also 3 patients currently at University Hospital. A 66-year-old woman is currently in fair condition. That would be an improvement for her since last checked. There's also a 10-year-old girl in serious condition at University Hospital. And then there's a 9-year-old girl in good condition at University Hospital. So as all of this has been playing out over the last 5 days, you still have 5 people who survived this tragedy that are still in a hospital, you know, hopeful to get out soon. We don't know when they're going to get out, but people will obviously continue to keep them in their prayers, as well as the people who are trying to heal from losing a loved one.
What we're also continuing to see this weekend are vigils. We had one in El Paso today. Remember 2019, you had dozens of lives lost, the majority Hispanic, just like we did see in this shooting a Tuesday, I should say. And El Paso, they, in their vigil, said the names aloud of each victim. We're seeing tributes like that from community members, from sports teams, San Antonio FC. At 21 minutes, was it correct?
Yeah, last night at the 21-minute mark, they paid tribute and took a knee. So again, in case you're just joining us, this is Air Force One taking off from Kelly Field here in San Antonio. President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden inside Air Force One. As you see it lift off from the ground, headed back to Delaware after what's been a long day, a day full of emotions, grief, sadness, anger, frustration. But there you have Air Force One leaving South Texas after a long day. A day of prayer, a day of healing, a day of meeting with families of victims, a day of meeting with survivors, a day of meeting with first responders, as well as a day to pay respect at Robb Elementary School, where there is a growing memorial. Of course, that terrible tragedy started outside the school, really. So you're taking a live look at Air Force One headed back to Delaware right now.
What we are seeing